Hello Math 20-2. Today we're going to learn about the quadratic formula and how that relates to the stuff we learned before about roots and x-intercepts and so on, okay? Basically, the quadratic formula is another way of solving or factoring something. Sometimes it's faster and easier, sometimes it's more complicated. If it's a simple quadratic, you don't need to use the quadratic formula because you could do it fast in your head. But some more complicated ones, or ones that don't have whole roots, like maybe the root of it is a decimal or fraction or irrational number, then you're going to need the quadratic formula. So here we go. Here is our quadratic formula. Our quadratic formula is this guy right there. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Tomorrow in class, remind me, I have a song to help you remember this formula. Even though it will be given to you on your formula sheet, I still have a song for you to remember this formula. So let's start off with this first example. It has Gavin did this first one here, and we could use these steps to help us out to solve the next example. So, we look at this. Here is my equation. It's a quadratic equation. That means we could use the quadratic formula. Okay? Now, what is my a value? A value is always your leading coefficient, which is going to be 6. What is my b value? B is the other one by the x, which is right there, which is going to be, in this case, negative 1. Because notice this is negative, that's positive. So you're always adding it, so you're adding negative 1, b. Okay? Now c should be positive c, that's the constant, so that's going to be negative 12. Now let's put this all into my formula. Here's my formula. Let's plug everything in. So b is negative 1. So it's b plus or minus b, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared, negative 1 squared, minus 4a, which is 6, and then we have c, which is negative 12, all over 2a, which is 6. Now, almost done. Now we just have to do the calculations part. Negative times 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Plus or minus square root of, what is negative 1 squared? 1. Subtract. 4 times 6 is 24. And then multiply by negative 12. Well, negative 12 times negative 12 is 144 times 2 is 288. So we're subtracting negative 288. All over 12. 2 times 6 is 12. Now, simplify this a bit more. We have the square root of 289, all divided by 12. Well, what is the square root of 289? The square root of 289 is 17 times 17. So we're going to have 1 plus or minus 17, all divided by 12. Well, what does that equal to? We could have two answers here. We have plus, so 1 plus 17, which is 18 over 12, or we could have 1 minus 17, which is 16 over 12. Okay? Now, these can both be simplified. I look at this, both of these here can be divided by 6. Okay, 18 divided by 6 is the same as 3. 12 divided by 6 is 2. And my other answer is 16 divided by 12, those could both be divided by 4. So that's going to be 4 over 3. And those are my two answers. So my roots are 3 over 2 and 4 over 3. Those there are my two roots. Okay? All right, let's take a look at our next question here. It says, use the quadratic formula to determine the roots of the equation 2x squared minus 8x plus 5 is equal to 0. Give the exact values in simplest form to the nearest, give the answers in exact values in simplest form and to the nearest hundredth. I'm just most likely going to give it an exact form right now. All right, here we go. So let's look at our formula. Our formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. That is my formula. Okay, x is equal to. Well, what is my b value? A is 2. My b value is negative 8. And my c value is equal to 5. So let's plug each thing in. So we have negative 8. So that is negative 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared, which is, okay, I put that negative 8 squared minus 4 multiplied by a, which is 2, and multiplied by c, which is 5, all over 2 times 2, 2a, which is 2. Okay? So I plugged in everything into its spot in the formula. Now, let's go over here and start solving this. So we have x is equal to 8, right? Because it's plus or minus. Negative 8 is positive 8, plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 4 times 2 is 8. And then we have to multiply by 5 is 40, minus 40, all over 4. Now we continue this. This is going to give me 8 plus or minus the square root of 16 all over 4. Well, what is the square root of 16? Well, the square root of 16 is 4. So then we end up getting 8 plus or minus 4 all over 4. Both of these can be divided by 2, or we have two answers. This is 8 plus 4 is 12. All right, so we have 12 over 4, or 8 minus 4 is 4. So that gives me two answers. First one, 12 over 4, is going to be 3. And the next one, 4 over 4, is equal to 1. So x can equal to, my roots are 3 and 1. Those are my two roots. Okay? Let's take a look at the next one. It says, explain how you can determine the zeros of a function using the quadratic formula. So here we have this equation. Use the quadratic formula to determine the zeros of the function. What do you notice? Okay? So, let's use the quadratic equation. So we have, this is my a, b, c. So we have negative b plus or minus the square root of 4, or of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a, which is equal to, in this case, b is negative 12. So we have 12, negative 12 is 12, plus or minus the square root of b squared is going to be 144. And we have minus 4. And then a is 4. And then c is 9. Divided by 2a, which is 4. Now we're going to continue this. I'm going to get 12 plus or minus the square root of 144. 4 times 4 is 16. Multiplied by 9 is going to be 144. I believe. Yep, 144. All divided by, and what do we have here? 2a, which is going to be 8. Okay, so my answer is just one answer. I only have one answer for this one, it looks like. My answer is, because this is 0, which is 12 all over 8 plus or minus 0, which gives me, both those can be divided by 4, which is 3 over 4, or 0.75. Well, let's draw the graph on the grid. Okay, so we're going to put this all here in my y-axis. So this is going, let's put it in, and go up. We have 4x squared, and what is it? Minus 12x plus 9. And we're going to graph it. And there's my graph. And if you look, it touches only once. So my graph is going to look, and it's at 9, so this here is going to be 9. It's going to come in, it's going to just touch. Here's 1, 2, 3. So it's just going to touch. Oh, here's going to be 1, and this is going to be 2. So I'm going to erase that at 3/4, or 0.75. If I calculate my 0, I just go left bound, enter. Right bound is there, enter. My guess is going to be somewhere there, enter. And if I look at that, oh, I get 1.5. Huh. Ah, because it's 12 over 8. Whoopsie. Both of those divided by 4 is going to give me 3 over 2, which is 1.5. My mistake. Good thing I went over and checked. 12 divided by 8 is 3 over 2. Okay? So that should be right there, so 1.5. Okay? Next. Consider the function 2 to the power of x. Okay? So explain what happens when you try to determine the zeros of this function. So this one only has one zero because it touches only once. Alright, so let's try using the quadratic formula to determine the zeros. So I'm just going to, my equation is already up here, so I'm just going to start plugging things in. Up so we can still see it. So we have x is equal to, we have negative 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 5 squared, subtract 4, a is 2, and c is 10. Okay, I just used my formula right there. All divided by 2a, which is 2 times 2. Now let's try and do this here. Now, I end up going to get 5 plus or minus all over 4, and we have the square root of 25, subtract. Now, if I look at this, this is going to be subtract 80, which gives us 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 80 minus 25 is 55 all over 4. Now, can we square root a negative number? Try it. You cannot. Your calculator will say, error, you cannot square root a negative number. Therefore, there are no real roots. That means there are no x-intercepts. So this graph is going to look something like this, and it never crosses the x-intercept. Let's try graphing it to see how right we are. Okay? Now, there are no real roots. That means it doesn't cross the x-intercept. So we have, let's put this in, we have 2x squared, and then we're going to minus 5x, then we're going to plus 10, and we graph. Oh, it's a lot farther that way than I expected, but still, there we go. It doesn't cross. Okay? So that is your assignment. Hopefully you understand it. It's just basically based on the quadratic formula. Good luck as I see you tomorrow. And remember to remind me about what the quadratic formula solve.